So the film Quantum Kleptomania is an idea of a film that came to mind in Greg's workshop in a creative thinking space. However, my actual documentary is about the workshop, and the idea is a film that won't be seen in this documentary, but it has evolved from this documentary. Okay, so let's do a complete rehash of the edit.
You're walking from the lift to the door of the office, that's all right. So in terms of, just to summarise how you would go about that, so the beginnings of what the treatment would be in terms of how, it's mixed observational and talking head footage. Yeah, so she talked about, so that's not a lot of words, and I know that may seem like I've thrown loads of stuff out, but we're trying to boil everything down into the essential ideas. So next was Christina. Again, this moves on from the lift and closer to the doors of the office because of the nature of the idea. Examining portals as both a physical representation of social division, using the Deptford underpass to represent a pathway between the gentrified and sterile and the ungentrified and authentic, unique, and as an existential concept fed by sci-fi and the media. Yeah? Did we feel that was... Yeah. I mean, this is just my observation of the ideas. You guys are going to take these, I'll send these on and you correct them. Just create your own. You know, if you haven't written one before or already, just use it as a reference, nothing more. You know, it should be completely disregarded, but it's a reference point. So in terms of that, beginnings of the how, mixed media using still and observational to VO, voiceover, in the main, with all interviews filmed for possible use. So she talked about using sort of VO to accompany it, but if you're going to do VO, you shoot the interviews anyway. You use the sound, you've got the imagery there if you want it. You know, if you've got no intention of using it, doesn't matter, but you'd still shoot the footage just to have it, especially if you're shooting it on digital or on the camera, and you know, you're not paying for stock or processing, the same might as well. Observing strict interview criteria, open brackets, fixed number of set questions, seeking to reveal universal truths through individual experience, close brackets. So in terms of her modus operandi, that's pretty much what I got from what she was talking about. Do you think we missed anything? Because the mixed media element of what she wanted to do, I think, was important. Where she used stills and she used other things, and it became an extension of the visual essay that she was already doing for her course. Yeah? Reckon we got that? Abner, I knew Lloyd Jones. Using recollections from those who knew him to discover who her father, Lloyd Jones, really was, and so examining what impact he has had on her life and outlook, simultaneously making a social study of Dalston in the late 20th century and the interaction, impact and legacy of both the Irish and Caribbean communities there.
Sounds good. Wish I could have written that all down, but yeah, I've got it.
We're only reading these out, so I'll send these out to everyone. There's no point sending it out if I've got it completely wrong, so I'm just making sure I haven't. And then just use it as reference. You know, these are just, all I've written down is notes from what you said. I haven't invented anything here. This is your stuff, not mine. So in terms of modus operandi, multimedia, utilising archive, still and moving image alongside talking head, used as is and as VO, and observational footage. Yeah? So again, the mix of those. So, all of these ideas I really like, but I think we'll talk about each one in terms of approach, but there are loads of, I think Hackney Council would massively want to get some sort of involvement and help you out on this, and certainly the Rio would, and Rio. There are lots of different places in Hackney that hold fantastic archive. I think you get a lot of help in getting this done.
That's good to hear.
So Claire, Destroying Egypt. Again, these are just initial titles that I wrote down from the notes. I don't know, you will title things yourselves. But how the commoditisation of culture ultimately destroys it, using Egypt and its industrial approach to the marketing of its history as a case in point. Yeah? Again, sort of rough modus operandi. Multimedia, utilising talking head, archive and stock imagery with possible first-person journey to museums, exhibitions. So you're actually presenting, I got the impression, rightly or wrongly, that you'd be almost presenting the piece and presenting the questions. So rather than as a sort of stand-away filmmaker, there's a bit more of the actual, you know, when a filmmaker introduces something themselves and introduces the proposition to the audience. I got that impression. I could have been wrong.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Neil, happy. And most importantly, happy's got a question mark after the word. So an ultimately uplifting examination and reflection on a life of brackets satisfactory, melancholy, asking the dual questions, what is happiness and am I happy? Modus operandi, and there's an awful lot of the idea within the modus operandi for me for this, is utilising talking head from family and close friends and observational footage of activities that make Neil happy. Writing, research, teaching, broadcasting, close brackets, alongside narrative video and dramatised tableau of happy moments.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Dramatised tableau?
You know, as you
So reconstructions.
yeah, they're the reconstructions of moments. So where you showed me those storyboards were you composing happy moments, the composition of a happy moment. But I got the impression that you weren't recreating them as if they were supposed to be real footage. That you were allowed to observe them as a construction. So put them over as tableau, but that's essentially what that is. It's an overt reconstruction rather than trying to make it look real. And stylised to a point as well. Because I thought that would be quite nice to sort of, like, you know, because happiness itself is an ethereal concept. You know, you could bring a sense of the stylised and dramatic to those, because it's something that's never really real, never really is. So does that?
Yeah, but only uplifting, you said.
Yeah. You on glass half full, mate. Do you know?
Hopefully it's uplifting.
Well, you'll find out in the making of it. I assume. But there was, I got the impression when you spoke about. Hi, Betty. We'll come back and go back. But I got the impression that your family may not agree with you, and that your family may say, we think he's happy to go. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's, I think there's something life affirming, like really ultimately life affirming within that, and I think it's going to be a uplifting piece. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's going to make me very sad and want to go and sit in the room. We'll wait and see.
I'll do that.
We didn't really touch on a title other than what is documentary, so I've just got it down to what documentary. So an examination of the term and what it both represents and misrepresents, with at its core an in part dramatisation of visual Chinese whispers as a phenomenon, watching an idea knowledge distort as it is appropriated by each person that receives and then imparts it.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I think, I've got a title though, a working title.
Right, what's the working title?
Well, right. So I read what I've written. I'm looking for your support to create a 3-minute long scripted mockumentary with a working title, The Gypsy and the Troglodyte. The film will be low budget with high production values, shot with the latest phone cameras, filming exaggerated talking heads and stylised natural phone conversations. The actors will be discussing the rumour that Spencer has gone to live in a cave with a gypsy. As the conversation gets passed from one call to another, the facts get exponentially further from the truth, which is finally revealed at the end. The aim to explore preconceived stereotypes and illustrate how easy it is to misinterpret or pass on inaccurately a message we hear.
That's the second part of today done, because that's a synopsis, that's a full synopsis, pretty much a treatment, because you're saying exactly what you do in a bit more detail and touching on sort of how you go about it as well. Could you send that to me written down? And then I think that's a great idea. We're going to have to, I think, because it's sort of mockumentary, trying to keep some sort of documentary, a factual element in it. So maybe it's a case of narrating what the point and process of them, almost as if we're watching the making of. So if we're watching the making of with you, talking us through the process as you create, then it becomes both things at once.
Right, okay, I'll do it.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Otherwise I'm going off.
well, it becomes a straight piece of sort of narrative drama, which is really valid, and it's got, there's commentary to it, and there's a point to it, but it just wanders off slightly the remit of what we're trying to do for this initial one. I think it's a brilliant idea, but I'm just how we can execute that and keep it going.
No, I've really been sort of thinking about it.
Yeah, but again, this brings me to quantum kleptomania, which again, what you did in terms of the treatment that you handed me, because that looked like an accomplished sort of ad treatment. Do you know what I mean? It was visually led, because it's going to be a visually led piece. So for something, as I was saying to you outside, your stuff for me works on sort of many levels intellectually. The fact that you're filming right now has thrown me a little bit, but that's fine. We'll keep going. It's not my first rodeo, David. Because it works on so many different levels intellectually, trying to get an elevator pitch. What I don't want to do is force you into making an elevator pitch and thus underselling the idea and the concept itself. But your concept as a piece, you could make a feature around what I've put here, and it doesn't even scratch the surface, but it was as close to an elevator pitch I could get with it, was an examination of the commoditisation of education and the possibility of creative succubi in what should be facilitatory positions. Mixed media using manipulated archive, stock and still imagery, alongside observed footage of the open film class and dramatised segments.
Yeah, but as you said earlier, I think it would be really helpful for me, or challenging to, by applying the thing of trimming it right down to, trying to do a succinct elevated pitch with it. Even though it may not get down to that level, I think it will become better and get rid of some of the superfluous bits that I tend to add in.
The superfluous and the multi-layered element of your work that I've seen up to this point, I think is fantastic. And the fact that it goes off on tangents, I would hate to be in a position to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. It's like, because that's a complete nonsense. You've already made something which I thought was really accomplished. Okay, there's not necessarily huge production value running all the way through it, but you circumnavigate that by having proper intellectual content at the core of it. So it's almost like you get it's like the Blair Witch Project. You know, the Blair Witch Project hasn't got the best, this, that and the other, but the idea is so good and it's so scary.
Did they do it on a
that
handheld?
you don't care. Yeah.
Good.
They spend an awful lot of money making it look cheap. but it gets there because of the central idea. Do you know what I mean? And your stuff gets there completely because of the central idea. So I think it's a great exercise to always look at your work as just enough essential parts, whatever the work is, whatever you're doing at any given, you know, what's the essence of it? What do I need to achieve? How do I go about achieving it? So turning it into an elevated pitch, I think, is a brilliant exercise. But once you've turned it into the elevated pitch, don't by any means stop what you already do as a filmmaker in terms of going off on those tangents and giving yourself that freedom at any point to find new and different narrative strands within it. Because we're going to try and make this a 3 to 6 minute piece. Possibly re-examine the ambition of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Almost as if you were treating this as a precursor or like a sizzle reel for your next larger project. Because our intention would be, when we've gotten all of these films done, is to have a platform on which they live so that they become an advertisement both for your skills and for the course itself. And not that I want them to be uniform, of course we don't want them to be uniform, you're individual people, they're going to be individual pieces of work in their own right. But on the same ticket, we want people to be able to go, watch them. People consume shorter, more succinct things more easily. Now, all of these ideas could be extended into large pieces, and I think some of them will. You know, I think you're going to have, for all your ideas, you're going to have a tough time editing them down into 6 minutes if you get all of the component parts. And apparently you've already got those component parts, which we're going to come to in a minute. But I think if we try and get this 3 to 6 minute limit, so we've got something that lives on there, again, I think it's a good exercise in its own right. Yeah? Betty, we've been going through, you're going to write all of these things yourselves, but just to get us started, from everyone's notes last week, I've written down what I felt was the elevator pitch of each piece. So elevator pitch, as a definition, a short description of an idea that explains a concept in a way such that any listener can understand it in a short period of time. The background of it is that you're in an elevator with...
Something like that, you know, I can have Jack Nicholson in the elevator with Robert De Niro, and I've got the elevator operator that I really wasn't paying attention to, and so I just cast anybody. That day will be about how bad the elevator operator was, and with Jack Nicholson and Robert De Niro looking at me like I'm a moron, how could I cast this person? It's not about their scene, suddenly about him. You've got to pay attention.
So I've got to say,
everywhere.
How much I
You'll regret it, you know.
However, I did find a challenge, which was cutting the interview from 10 minutes to 2 minutes.
My film, the film that I make at the end of the day is my movie. It may be a team thing as well, but I'm taking the knocks, I'm taking the bashes, and probably I've developed it, etc., etc. So yes, it's my movie. I said that's what makes these things live. And so it was a really exchange of ideas. Doug saying, well, you know what, let me think about that. So we came back with a literally robot camera. He developed a robot camera and said, I'm going to give you the smoke. He said, the problem is, if I'm doing one frame every 5 seconds with a 5-second exposure, or a 1 second exposure is endless. If I have smoke in there, that smoke's going to be moving. In excess of $40 million. So.
Somebody with an awful lot of money and an awful lot of power, their say-so could mean a project gets greenlit as in paid for and made or not, and you've only got that time that it takes you to go from the elevator from the ground floor to wherever their office is. So that's what an elevator pitch is for. From our point of view, what an elevator pitch serves to do is clarify exactly what our idea is going to be, and then we build on top of that. We write the synopsis, which is a little bit more detailed, and then a treatment, how we're going to go about doing it. So, what I wrote for yours, and correct me, have you already written an elevator pitch yourself? If I read this out, this is just my observation, so it could be completely wrong. So if it's wrong, just correct me, but it's just a starting point for each idea. So, Betty, chess. Examining chess as a philosophical exercise, identifying life lessons and thought processes that the game teaches. And how you would go about doing that. So it's mixed observational footage and talking head. So you talked about there being various different clubs that you go to, people that you met within the clubs. You talk about you talked to me last week about the first woman that you applied to on the chat, what her motivation had been in, just the examples that you gave me last week, I found fascinating. And again, it worked on so many different levels. It was like her motivation for setting up the club, how people interact with each other in the modern world by finding these spaces, finding these activities online, but then engaging in a real and personal way. I mean, I found all of that incredible, like really, really good. But I hear that you've already gone and shot some stuff.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Have you made a piece? And have you cut it?
I've cut it roughly, it's 40, just under 40 minutes, 30 minutes.
Betty, you're a genius. The motivation of just getting out there and getting it is brilliant. Would you be willing to share it with us?
Yeah.
Yeah?